So I think it's getting to 7. So I'm going to get Anna to just come round and give you a wave, because she's my wonderful crew person tonight.
Hello!
And I'm really glad she's here. It's very nice that she's here. Okay, so this evening, well, again, welcome if you've literally just joined us. My name's Sraddhagita, and I'm very pleased to be here. And this evening, I'm going to be talking a little bit about Shraddha, or faith, and also resilience, or maybe how faith can lead a bit to us experiencing a bit more resilience. So probably for most of us at the moment, there's a whole range of emotions going on. There's anxiety, there's grief, there's probably doubt, fear, there's a sense of loss. All of those things can make us feel really ungrounded, like in a way the ground's been, all the carpet's been pulled from under our feet, and in a way it kind of has. So, yeah, what can help us with that? Well, one of the things I was reflecting on is that faith can give us some ground again. And I'll say a little bit about faith in Buddhism. The word is Shraddha, which is also part of my name. So, so it's Shraddha. And what that means is, Shraddha, one definition is to place the heart upon. So it's a very beautiful definition. It's a faith that is emotional and heart. It's all about heart. It's based on intuition, reason, and experience. And another definition is that it's what is ultimate in us, responding to what is ultimate in the universe, which again I think is very beautiful. So it gives us a much bigger perspective, the whole idea of Shraddha and us responding or resonating with what's ultimate in the universe, from the very best in ourselves. So Bhante Sangharakshita, my teacher, says that what we understand with the head, we also need to feel in the heart. And I really like that. And there's this word in Buddhism called chitta, which means heart-mind. So this sense of head and heart joined, integrated. So for a Buddhist, you would have faith in the 3 jewels, so the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. So I'm going to focus a little bit on the Buddha. So the Buddha really is what we're responding to, what we bow to, like to this beautiful Buddha here. You might see people bowing to shrines. What they're bowing to really partly is their own potential for enlightenment. The Buddha was born as we are born, and it's this sense of our deeply hidden capacity for enlightenment is kind of being confronted or resonating with a figure like the Buddha that we see here. So I was remembering myself that when I first came across Buddhism, I was travelling in India, and I did a course called How to Make Your Life More Meaningful. And it was in Ladakh. I remember seeing Buddhas. The course was in Dharamsala, but then later I went to Ladakh, and I remember going to a particular monastery and coming across this very, very beautiful Maitreya figure, which is a Buddha figure. And it was a huge Buddha. It was like 2 floors, basically. It was so large. So if you're on the ground floor, you've got the base of the Buddha, the sort of bottom half of the body. And if you went up to the first floor, you came into contact with the face of the Buddha, the crown, all of those parts. And it was a very, very beautiful sculpture, a beautiful rupa. So when I came across that, I had this real sense of resonating with something. I couldn't really put my finger on what that was, this sort of mysterious quality. But another thing that Sangharakshita says, which I really like, is he says when you are sometimes confronted with an image, it's like 2 stringed instruments side by side, And if you pluck the string on one, then the other one softly vibrates. So I was thinking that's probably what happened a bit with me and this figure of Maitreya. It was like something in that figure really sort of confronted me with something, and I felt this resonance as the string of that Buddha sort of sounded. Something in me responded. So I was also thinking about this shrine room as well. This shrine room's been here for over 40 years, and I was thinking about the thousands of people that have meditated here over the years, and it's really created a very beautiful atmosphere, which is a bit hard to describe, but if you haven't been here, you might get a bit of a sense of it just from looking at this beautiful Buddha behind us, at the beautiful hangings on either side, which are red lotuses growing up from the mud, and they're a vision of humanity, which is an image that the Buddha himself really saw when he looked out after his enlightenment experience. He looked out and had this vision of all beings as like these lotuses trying to grow. And it's a very, very beautiful image, I think. And this shrine room can really sort of help us to get a sense of an atmosphere. I'm hoping that as we meditate, you'll get a sense of and I'll get a sense of the seemingly solid walls of this shrine room dissolving, and some of that atmosphere that's been created by so many people over the years, some of that atmosphere kind of flowing out towards you. So if you're fairly new, it might even be your first time of tuning in tonight to the centre, then maybe the quality of faith, you're going to be thinking, well, what am I going to have faith in? I don't really know much about, the Buddha or much about his life, whatever. But I guess what I'd encourage in the meditation is to maybe try and have a sense of openness and receptivity. Maybe look for little seedlings or glimmerings of faith or meaning, or this sense of yes as you're meditating. Maybe there's a sense of feeling, okay, I've touched a bit of ground of myself again, I can touch base with myself. And that can give us a bit of confidence. So it might be that there are just these little seeds that you're going to be sort of tending as we practice tonight, as we meditate. If you're more regular to meditation, it might be that your faith is more like a little sapling or a young tree, and it still needs a little bit of attention. You need to tend to it, you need to water it with faith, you need to look after it. Sometimes you see young trees in the park and they've got a little covering around them to protect them, or a little fence around them, just so that they get a chance to root. So I think that's really important, that we sort of really tend to our faith. And maybe you're a more experienced practitioner, and you've already got quite deep roots of faith. But however your faith is, it's really good to keep watering it and to keep bringing it into being. As I said, my name has faith in it, and it means she who sings the song of faith. So the song of faith isn't a static thing. I have to sing it into being, and I really like that. It's a verb, and that we can sing our faith. We can resonate with faith. It's resonating in us, and it might be quite quiet and soft, or it might be much more loud and or even booming, who knows. So that's just a little bit about faith. But the other thing I wanted to say about it is that it's really good to reflect on what you have faith in yourself. We all have something that we feel connected with, that maybe we have faith in. So it's good to just give that a bit of space and give yourself time to think about that. Maybe it's faith that you yourself can change through meditation. Maybe you've already seen that. Or maybe you've just seen someone else change through meditation. Sometimes we can't always see ourselves changing, but we can notice other people changing. Or maybe you're inspired by somebody that's you've seen, you know, who's been practicing meditation. Might be the Dalai Lama. It could be, you know, somebody who's kind of, just, I suppose, expressing some kind of faith, really. So it's good to just reflect on that, and we're going to start with that in the practice. But lastly, I just want to mention the Buddha, because when the Buddha was on the threshold of enlightenment, he was assailed by Mara. So Mara was like, you could say, death to the Buddha, and he was trying to, you know, throw everything at the Buddha to stop him becoming enlightened. And one of the things that he did was he kind of used a sort of undermining doubt to try and sort of, really sort of get to the Buddha, if you like. But the Buddha just sat really still, and Mara asked him who his witness was, you know, the fact that for his practice, what right did he have to sit where he was sitting? And the Buddha just made a very, very simple gesture. So he just leaned forward, and with his hand, he just touched the earth, and he said, "The earth will be my witness. And the earth has witnessed all my practice." So I think I started by talking about maybe we felt a bit ungrounded, and one of the ways that we can feel the ground again is to actually touch the ground of our practice. I remember in my own meditation practice many years ago, I used to do this sometimes. I used to just quietly move my hand forward, I'd touch the earth, and I'd draw some confidence and strength from that. And I think that's just a really good gesture to think about, is just touching the earth. So if you need to during the practice at any time, you want to touch the earth, to touch the ground of your practice, please do. But you might be also feeling, well, I'm not really that in touch with faith just now, and, you know, how can faith really be helpful, or you know, you might be a bit sort of, I don't really know what to do. So I've got a poem to read you. I find poetry often can sort of evoke or suggest things that sometimes words and concepts can't quite get to, and I think poetry for me as well touches my heart. So it's a poem by David White, and it's called Faith. And I'm going to read it, and then we're going to dim the lights a little bit, and we can do some meditation. So, yeah, I'm going to read the poem, and we'll then dim the lights, and I'll lead us into a metabhavana practice, which, if you're not familiar with, I'm not going to teach that practice, but I will sort of drop in some hints as we're going along. So, David White. I want to write about faith, about the way the moon rises over cold snow, night after night, faithful even in its fading from fullness, slowly becoming that last curving and impossible sliver of light before the final darkness. But I have no faith myself. I do not give it the smallest entry. Let this then, my small poem, like a new moon, slender and barely open, be the first prayer that opens me to faith. So just starting by tuning into the ground beneath you, feeling where your posture connects with the ground, with the earth. And having a sense of that support underneath you. You might need to just sway a little bit, rock a little bit, until you find that sense of your sitting bones dropping down into the cushions or the chair. And feeling your spine supporting you, letting it lengthen upwards. And feeling the head poised at the top of the spine, crown open towards the sky. And having a sense of the shape of your body, the space that it's taking up. And maybe you can have a sense of it as a bit like a landscape. And with your awareness of travelling through that landscape, noticing the contours, and noticing the breath in the landscape. Letting the awareness start to gather around the breath. Letting the breath be your anchor. So your awareness can be anchored both in the body and the breath. Grounding yourself through the body, through the breath. And making room for whatever your experience is, giving it some space, letting it be there. Breathing with whatever's there. And then also let yourself just bring the word Shraddha or faith to mind. Maybe something that I've said comes into your awareness, or perhaps an image from the poem, or something I said again. And let that be there as well. Maybe drop in the question, What do I have faith in? So doing that in a light way, as if you were dropping a pebble into a pool of water. And just see and be curious about the ripples. It might be that you have some faith in yourself just sitting here, meditating. Or it might be that a teaching comes to mind, or a person. So let any glimmerings or seeds of metta be there. And by focusing in on them, you're encouraging them to grow. So it's a bit like you're a gardener tending to your seeds or your sapling or your tree. Watering those seeds, bringing them to mind and heart. And then letting that sense of faith start to flavour your experience. And we're going to take that into a metta bhavana practice where we're just going to focus on ourselves and the world. So in the first stage, connecting with a sense of care for ourselves, loving kindness towards ourselves. Might be just the starting point of you getting yourself here this evening, sitting on the cushions, giving yourself this space to meditate. You might look for glimmerings of warmth, seeds of warmth in the body. Sensations from the breath warming you, softening you. If you're newer to the practice, you might use a traditional sentence. May I be well. May I be happy. May I be free from suffering. And may I progress. And if you wander off, just noticing that's happened. Coming back patiently, kindly, back to the body, back to the breath, back to the practice. Perhaps reconnecting with this sense of faith, reconnecting with wishing yourself well. And then let that sense of care, connection, let it expand outwards, including all of us meditating here together in different locations, but connected by this same practice that we're all trying to do. And the walls of this shrine room, seemingly solid, I am imagining dissolving away. And there are these threads connecting us here with you there. You there with us here. May you all be well. May you all be happy. And then let that ripple out a bit further. Including more and more people. Trying to connect with this sense of care and empathy. People we know, people we don't know. People in lots of different situations, in different states of mind and circumstances. May they all be well and happy, free from suffering. And then slowly starting to relax any effort that you're making. Just letting go of the practice. Just sitting quietly for a few moments. Giving yourself time to absorb it. And maybe just spending a few more moments just reflecting on how that went. What did you notice? Was there anything you learned about yourself? And then, your own time, slowly opening your eyes. And if you want to come out of your meditation posture, then obviously do. You don't need to sit in your meditation posture. If you would like to, you can just stretch your legs, obviously, sit more comfortably. So now there's about sort of 20 minutes, something like that, where we can sort of explore any questions you might have around perhaps this theme of faith. I'd be interested to just hear a little bit from you around this theme of faith, any questions or comments or reflections you might have had around doing that practice or about something that I've said. And sometimes it takes a little while to kind of, for it all to soak in a bit, so you don't need to kind of immediately start typing. Just give yourself a moment to come out from one mode into another. Yeah. Well, I'll ask you a question. What did you discover in that meditation? Did anyone discover anything? Or notice anything? Or I could ask you, what do you have faith in?
Shy tonight.
Are you shy tonight? I'll have to get Anna to ask me a question.
What did you discover about yourself?
What did I discover?
In your meditation.
In my meditation. I suppose I am one thing I am discovering is that even when I'm not meditating with people literally, like meditating in this shrine room at the moment is quite interesting, because usually when I meditate here, I'm meditating with lots of people, but I still feel as if I am meditating with lots of people. So I guess I'm discovering that as much as, I really value and I miss that sort of physical connection with people and having other people here practicing together, in fairly large numbers, that I can still feel those connections. I can feel those connections in my heart and my mind. And even though I can't see you, I can get a sense of you. So that's something I'm discovering. So my metta bhavana feels quite rich in that respect. Yeah.
Got a few questions and comments.
Okay,
now.
great.
Yeah. Okay, so Kim says that she discovered a sense of personal sadness about what's happening seemed to disappear when she expanded her connection to others.
Yeah. That sounds really interesting, Kim. Yeah, often that can happen, can't it, when we sort of take a step outwards as well, or look outwards as well. We need to look within, obviously, and see what's going on with us, but maybe when we've attended to ourselves, we can also start to look out a bit towards others, and that can sort of make our own sadness part of a sort of, I suppose, a bigger sadness, but or it can connect us with others. Yeah, because we're all we are in the same boat, although a lot of us are in very different circumstances, and for some people it will be much more extreme at the moment, for other people less extreme, but there'll still be lots of different emotions, and sadness, sense of loss, of all different things. Yeah.
So Darren says, among other things, he says that life becomes more simple when he follows the breath, and that he has more faith in the mind when he's not listening to it as much.
Yeah. So you're discovering more faith in the breath. Yeah, well, I suppose the breath is it's very direct, isn't it? It's our actual experience, and it's the thread of connection that we have. We, since the day we were born, we've been breathing, and it's something we can keep returning back to. And yeah, it can give us quite a lot of information as well, and it's definitely a very direct experience. And it's not that we want to not, the mind is very, it's not trying to say the mind's not useful in meditation, it really is, but the mind can also take us away from meditation onto all sorts of worries, fears, anxieties, abstractions, but we can use the mind to actually bring our sense of purpose and our intention to bear on our meditation as well.
Okay, we've got a couple of people talking about irritability, restlessness, and impatience in the Metabhavana.
Yeah. Yeah, well, there are these hindrances towards hindrances in meditation, which irritability, impatience, all of those, they come into being, don't they? We sort of see them happening in our meditation. I suppose it's really good one of the things to do is to, well, first of all, name those things, which is what you're doing. So by naming the irritability, naming the impatience, in a way it's like you're saying, I've seen you. And that's a really good starting point, isn't it, to actually name something. It's a bit like, if we don't quite name it, it's sort of there, but we're not quite turning towards it. But by naming it, we're turning towards it, giving it a bit of attention, looking at it, and then we can sort of, maybe look at the energy as well involved in that. Sometimes those higher emotion or higher energy emotions can really take us up into, our head and into a lot of thought, and sometimes what we need to do is bring that energy of that experience down a bit in the body. So it can be really good to focus in on the belly, for example, if we find ourselves getting very into a lot of thought, impatient, angry, just coming back to the belly, breathing into the belly. That can be very calming. Touching the ground again, the ground of our experience, all of those things can be really useful. In a simple way, that's a way of working with some of those hindrances.
Martha is asking, Martha Reed is asking.
Oh, hello, Martha.
She's thinking about whether there's a connection between faith and the imagination. So does nurturing creativity also nurture faith?
Oh, what a really good question. Yeah, does nurturing faith also mean nurturing the imagination? Is there a link between the two? Yeah, I think there really is, actually. I think, I think also in the Metta Bhavana, in a way, we're using our imagination, aren't we? We're trying to imaginatively step into another person's shoes, for example. And that's another way of us using our imagination. So I think the Metta Bhavana is also very creative practice. And I think if we can sort of flavour it or imbue it a little bit with faith, the faith that, it does and can work, maybe reflecting on how it's already working for us, or, how it could potentially work. I mean, I think that's really important. And I do still remember the first time I learnt the Metta Bhavana. I felt like nothing much happened. I learnt it in this shrine room. Nothing much happened in the meditation. But when I went home, travelling back on the tube, I really noticed people in a way that I hadn't before. And that was definitely the effects, the positive effects, the benefits of trying to imaginatively put myself in their shoes during the meditation that I just learned. So yeah, I think it's really crucial to kind of see that link. Good question. Thank you.
So there's a few people who are saying that they like the metaphors that you've used. So about the walls sort of disappearing, and then also the thing about the two strings resonating. So Constanzo says that really resonates with him.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Yeah, I really find for myself that images, often metaphors and images, seem to evoke something or suggest something, and that often for me moves me. It's probably why I do end up using a lot of poetry and images when I practice, and I often find I have like a line of poetry in meditation just that appears, or an image. So yeah, I think you can allow that into your Metta Bhavana as long as that image or that poetry keeps you in connection with your purpose and what you're trying to do. So, I guess the danger is that it takes us away, but it's sounding from what you said that, that's really keeping you connected. So yeah, just keeping that connection with your purpose, but bringing in images. They can really then start to make the meditation practice our practice, because it's got to become our practice. There are traditional ways of doing it, but sometimes, the sentences, they can just get a bit repetitive, or we lose that sense of connection with them. So then we need to find new ways, don't we? So images can really help. Yeah.
So Tracy is, she says that she thinks sometimes the fear of suffering is worse than the suffering itself. And do you have advice on how to work with that in a practice?
Yeah. So that's a good question. So the fear of suffering is sometimes worse than the actual suffering itself. I think that's a really good question, and good area to draw out. Yes, I think the fear of something happening is often worse than when things often do happen. And well, I guess the way of working with that is really seeing that what we're experiencing is fear, and feeling that in the body. How does that fear manifest in the body? So probably it manifests in a kind of tightening up, maybe shaking, a sort of tensing of the belly, all of those things. So one way that we can start to work with that is to come to our body, notice what's happening, and try and breathe into those areas. Breathe some softness, kindness towards ourselves, some care, some loving kindness, definitely. It's almost like we can sort of soothe those fears a little bit by just using the breath, maybe, as I've said, to send the breath to those places. And also, well, I guess I wonder about this, what I was saying earlier about the Buddha actually touching the ground of his experience. I find that quite good, just to touch the ground, get some, sort of earth, literal earth. You could also try, I quite like hand gestures, so there is a Mudra of Fearlessness, which is something like this, which I quite like. So just sometimes sitting with a mudra can be helpful, I find. Like an open-handed mudra is very beautiful, but there's also a fearlessness mudra, which is more like this. So that's something one could do. And also maybe just to reflect on what you do have confidence in, because confidence and faith can also help us when we feel fearful.
We had one from earlier that Awa is saying that she feels like stretching during meditation, and is this something to avoid?
Well, I guess ideally what we do in meditation is we sit still. It's very easy when we're meditating to want to move. There's almost a restless sort of energy, isn't there, when we're actually sitting still. So it's good to sort of feel that and try not to move too much. We might need to make really subtle adjustments to our posture. I find myself doing that often. I'll make a subtle adjustment. But, no one would really know. I'm not really making a noise or anything. I'm not making a big movement. But we might need to move subtly. But maybe we could just, in our imagination, stretch. Maybe we don't need to literally do it. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes just the thought of it, could be enough. It's a bit like if we're tired, we might imagine a shower of water. Well, we don't need to literally necessarily go and put ourselves under that shower, but we could imagine it, and that could help us to stay awake. So the stretching, maybe imagining it, might just mean that the body can relax a little bit more, and it doesn't need to move, it can sort of settle. But it's good to just track that restlessness. But I think if you start moving because there's an itch or a stretch, what happens is we start this Mexican wave, and then, if I had started that in this meditation, there'd be a Mexican wave around the world by now, because you're all out there in different places. And it'd be a lovely Mexican wave, I'm sure, but actually there's a sort of stillness. What we're trying to create is like a sort of deep, sort of ocean-like stillness, because actually, if you think about it, you can only really get a sense of the depth of water when it's still. When it's all choppy, you can't quite get the sense of the depth. So, stillness, depth. Probably got time for one more question or comment or reflection, and then we'll have to wind it up, as they say. But yeah.
Well, a couple of people have mentioned just this difficulty extending metta out into the world.
Yeah. Well, I kind of know exactly what you mean. Sometimes I find that word extending out or expanding out. So another way of looking at it is including in. I quite like to often think about what I'm doing is just including in. So I'm drawing in towards me rather than having to feel I've got to keep expanding out when maybe I'm not feeling very expansive, but you could more think about what can I include. Start small, include a bit more, then you can include a bit more. And I think it is quite a tall order, to develop loving kindness for all beings in 20 minutes from where we are. Do you know what I mean? But hopefully at the moment we have got a bit more of a sense of empathy and connection with all beings because of what's happening in the world. So I think it's really good to make the most of that opportunity to include people where we can, expand where we can. Okay, so let's try and do that. That would be great. Okay, so going to leave it there for now in terms of what I've said and teaching and questions and things. But I do want to really just mention again all the live streaming that's going on here. This is a way of us connecting in with what's of value and meaning to us, maybe even with our faith, really, our Shraddha. So every evening, Monday to Friday, there's a live stream at 7 o'clock with different people. Tomorrow night, I think it's Subhadramati, so do tune into that. And also, we've got yoga this Thursday again at 12 o'clock. You can tune into that. And next week, we're going to be doing 3 yoga classes. So Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 12. So that's a new thing, 3 classes. So all of those things can help us stay connected both with our body, our heart, and our mind, which we all need at the moment. And yeah, it's been really great to be here with you. The last thing I want to say is we invite you, probably every time we do a live stream, we talk about our culture of generosity here, which we invite you to sort of participate in, partake in, if you like. So if you are in a position to partake of that and give in any way, you know, monthly or a one-off donation, that would be really, really welcome. All the things that we do here are really like an offering. So yeah, what I've done tonight is like an offering for you to sort of ponder, reflect on, and I really hope that the offering is of some benefit to you all, and I hope to see you all again at some point. Thank you once again for joining me tonight.